Welcome to this month in Linux gaming. It is now part 7 of this series. That means I've been doing these videos for about 7 months now, and there has been a lot of new things this past month of Linux gaming. Some very big hitters when it comes to the Linux desktop and Linux gaming space. And of course, if you don't know what this is, it's where I go over all types of things that are happening in the gaming space that have got to do with Linux, either it be some type of Linux software, or it be some type of driver releases that are happening, or maybe it's Proton Releases, which is the translation layer for Linux gaming, Windows to Linux translation, and many other things, including drivers with hardware as well, maybe peripherals, etc., etc. So I do think the biggest thing that happened last month was the announcement of the Steam machine, the Steam controller, and the Steam frame, and an announcement of the Steam Deck 2, kinda, a teaser you could say of an announcement of that coming sometime, maybe 2027, maybe 2028, that might get announced. This is actually a really big deal when it comes to Linux gaming and when it comes to Linux desktop, because if you don't know, the Steam machine is marketed as either a home console, couch console, or it is marketed as a desktop PC. That is the two things they market it as, and that is really important when it comes to them saying desktop, because this PC, when it comes to Linux desktop right now, a lot of people are unsure when it comes to trying out Linux desktop and using it as their operating system, and they may have issues. And when there's something like this that gets released and it has SteamOS installed on it, and they market it as a desktop PC, a lot of people really like that idea. And so the reason they like this is because of the fact that it has SteamOS on it, and so that is in the back of their mind, they're like, oh, I'm protected by Valve. And Valve can maintain SteamOS on the Steam machine, and they can be 100% sure that when they buy it and they want to play games on it, it will work properly because the drivers are supported well in the Linux kernel and in Mesa with RADV and all that. All of that is supported with the hardware that is in that machine. But the other big thing about the Steam machine is the fact that this could improve the Linux compatibility with gaming on Linux to do with things like anti-cheat. There is still a lot of games that do not support Linux because of the anti-cheat that they're using. Maybe it's kernel level, and they don't have a way of supporting Linux through user space or any other way, or the game does use an anti-cheat that does support Linux, but they've denied enabling it, and they just will not allow Linux players to play on that game on Linux machines because of many excuses. Maybe the market share is low, or maybe cheating is higher on Linux, or more easier to cheat on Linux versus Windows, which I would say that's very opinionated. In my opinion, it is a no, because in an open space, everyone can see what's going on, and so everyone can contribute to try and stop cheating. Of course, if an anti-cheat is proprietary, then that becomes a little bit harder, but when you are in an open space, you're able to collaborate with other people, and that can enhance the stopping of cheaters. But of course, again, that is opinionated. Companies seem to think that proprietary software is better because they have control over it, so they have a better chance of stopping cheaters, when, in my opinion, I think that is the wrong way of doing things. And one of the things that I did discover when it came to two people who are well known when it comes to the YouTube space, in the gaming space, I would say, when it comes to doing reviews on games, the Skill Up channel is their podcast that they do, and they got to interview two Valve developers who do work on Proton, the Steam Deck, the Steam machine, the Steam frame, especially on the right. The bald person, Pierre Loop, if I've said your name correctly, he is basically the main person when it comes to working on the Steam Deck and Proton. He's kind of like, you could say, the person who just decides what goes on, is what I think he does basically. But he does also contribute code. I've seen many commits from from him on Proton before, and he does like to post on Blue Sky a lot when it comes to different types of updates, when it comes to SteamOS on the Steam Deck, or when it comes to a certain game that people want to play, and he can post about if a game is going to work or not under Proton. He likes to do that a lot. But one question that they got to ask Pierre was about the anti-cheat situation and his opinion on what is Valve doing to improve anti-cheat on Linux so that these game studios can support Linux when it comes to the anti-cheat side. So let's watch it.
I was curious about jumping from that anti-cheat and that whole situation. You guys have gone on record about this a little bit in terms of it being supported on the developer side, but have you guys done any rethinking with that approach now that it's going to be a box plugged into a TV in somebody's living room accessing some of these games online?
It's been definitely something we think about, and there is more reasons to think about it in that environment, like you're pointing out, right? Because there's more reasons that someone would want to play an online game that requires anti-cheat if they have a machine like that compared to something like the Steam Deck. So definitely is something that's been like we've been working on it. We've enabled all the TPM APIs, right, that game developers would need to be able to build their anti-cheat systems. We've been working with a bunch of developers, right, like the players in the field that you might expect that are doing a lot of advanced anti-cheat stuff on the client side, and we're trying to make sure that we're working together towards something that can be supported. But at the end of the day, I think supporting anti-cheat and is kind of a constant effort, right? Like you have the system, the infrastructure, and you're always rolling out updates. There's a lot of like active things you're doing, and I think some of that work by nature, because it's so close to the platform, will have to be SteamOS specific. And so I think it will be something that like some publishers or some game developers will have to decide at their own rhothm if they want to do that work for SteamOS or not.
Right.
But we've been trying to help any way we can along the way.
Yeah, right. Interesting. So it is basically, it is happening in the sense that like you're working on it, but you can't give us any kind of timeline or what have you, because ultimately it's up to these anti-cheat providers and publishers to sort of make the decision to develop solutions that are compatible with SteamOS.
Right, and there's some things that are on our plate as well, for sure, that we've been working on in the background that will make that easier on their side as well.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, cool.
So as you can see, Pierre did answer the question, I would say, the best that he could, and he does make a great point that anti-cheat is an ongoing thing. When it comes to combating cheaters, they're always thinking of new ways to find an exploit, to create a new cheat, and then the anti-cheat has to try and solve it, to stop it, and it's just an ongoing battle. And that's why anti-cheats are in the kernel space now. But as he said, they are working on things, and he did mention about I think it was TPM or something, APIs, probably within Wine or something, has been supported, and he did also say that there's other things that they are going to bring to the table soon when it comes to the anti-cheat side of things. But it, again, as I always make a point, it is only up to the game studio if they want to support Linux. Most anti-cheats today already support Linux under Proton. Of course, that is user space, so it means that it's not in the kernel space, it's in user space, that meaning that cheaters technically may perhaps have a better edge when it comes to not being detected with different cheats. It also could be the case of where certain games will only support SteamOS, and they're only going to support the Steam machine, the Steam Deck, and the Steam frame if it is an online multiplayer game, instead of supporting just Linux desktop in general, which in my opinion would suck a lot, and it also doesn't really make much sense because SteamOS is an open environment. It's just based on Arch, but it's immutable, and there is nothing stopping the cheater from cheating on SteamOS versus a normal Linux distro. There's no difference. So I see no reason as to why, a game studio would only support SteamOS. I guess maybe there'll be some certain patches that SteamOS may have over normal distros, and that's why they could be picking SteamOS because they get help from Valve. That could be a situation that will happen. Maybe like Call of Duty or Valorant, for example, could only support SteamOS and nothing else, which again would suck. But a lot of people, a lot of normie people who want to get away from Microsoft, I think that's perfectly fine if they want to only support SteamOS. And then, of course, we also do have the Steam controller, looking very nice. 2 touchpads like the Steam Deck. Basically, a Steam Deck shoved together into a controller, just deleting the display, and it turns into a controller. That's basically what they did, with some ergonomics added to it and some extra buttons and gyro things that you can do, where you can like reset the gyro in it, which I think is really cool, even though I'll never use it. That is a nice piece of technology, I would say. And then the last one is the Steam frame, which what is really interesting about this is that it's running SteamOS, so it's running Linux. They got it to work on ARM hardware somehow. I guess they partnered with Qualcomm or something and made it work. And then it's translating x86 games to ARM. And as if anyone knows anything about the whole ARM translation, x86 translation, when it comes to gaming, Microsoft has kind of been struggling with that, and same goes with Mac. Apple has been struggling with that. So it's really interesting to see that they've been able to do this, x86 to ARM translation by using a project called Fex, which has been around for 7 years now. I actually did see a post from Pierre Loup, and he posted about how Fex has been around for 7 years. It was a 7-year anniversary, and this does a fast user mode x86 and x86 64 emulator for ARM64 Linux. So it's really interesting to see how Valve when it comes to open source software have been able to do what other companies have failed to do or are taking a really long time to do those things. And I think it's because, and some of the Valve developers said this, Valve has control, or not necessarily control, but they have access to the whole open source driver stack. So because they're using Linux, they're able to contribute to Mesa, they're able to contribute to the kernel, they're able to contribute to Proton, they're able to contribute to Wine, they're able to work with code weavers, which work on Wine, and they're able to contribute to Fex to make this all work. So that's what's really interesting about the Steam frame. Then the next one I'm going to talk about is the open source Nouveau plus NVK versus the Nvidia 580 Linux gaming / graphics and compute driver performance. So Michael did do some performance tests on gaming and compute with NVK plus Nouveau and Nvidia 580 drivers. So basically the latest of latest that you can choose for both of them. And he chose also Mesa Git and the latest kernel. I think it's the latest RC kernel he chose as well. Pretty sure. Yeah, he chose 6.18 Git kernel and Mesa 26.0 D level, so the Git version of Mesa on top of Ubuntu 25.10, and then the 580 driver with kernel 6.17. And when we go to the gaming side of things, because if you don't know, NVK has been improving when it comes to the gaming performance. There is a video from Faith X Strand who did just went up on stage and talked about NVK and its progress and how it's going well when it comes to NVK, and they're trying to improve it as much as possible. But if we look at, let's say, Dirt Rally 2.0 on the graphics set to low, I'm pretty sure this is 4K. The performance here, we can see NVK at 257, so this is the regular one, and then we have the Git version here, which is a little bit better, and then we see the 580 one, which, as we can see, is way ahead when it comes to the performance. But it is really awesome to see that the performance on Dirt Rally 2 on low settings is 257 FPS. Of course, the frame timing and all that needs to be, included, and I bet it probably isn't really that great, but nonetheless, it's 257 FPS on a FOSS driver. When it comes to RADV, for example, that driver started out as basically just hacking around with reverse engineering different graphics drivers in 2016, and it took quite a while for RADV, is how you actually pronounce it. It took the developers that were working on it, which was like 2 or 3, I think, and it grew over time as Valve stepped in and wanted to use it on the Steam Deck. It took them, from 2016 to now to get the driver good enough, and when it comes to newer GPUs as well. So I think this is going to be the same case where basically Valve is going to step in and help, which they are helping in some regards when it comes to like getting DLSS working on NVK. I could see in the next few years the drivers will be near the same as the proprietary drivers, and it could be a similar case really where, this probably won't happen, but like with AMD, RADV got so good that AMD dropped their freaking drivers for the RADV Vulkan driver in Mesa, which is absolutely insane that it got to that point that AMD just gave up, and they just like, you know what, we're just going to contribute to what everybody else is contributing. Maybe that could happen with Nvidia, but I highly doubt it. I think Nvidia loves to have their own stuff and their own drivers, and they rarely try to actually like help, but they have been helping recently with all the GSP firmware and the open driver that they created for the kernel. We could see where they are helping a lot, and I can see where NVK will improve. We can see with like Hitman 3, for example, on ultra settings, we can see here that NVK is struggling quite a bit. On the Git version, you can see a little bit of a jump there of improvement on 66 FPS. That's a decent improvement. So again, I could see in a couple of years from now, NVK will be a great option for people who don't want to use the proprietary drivers, and I could see where there could be actual features like DLSS available and maybe some other things, maybe like Vulkan video, for example, because that's being worked on in Mesa. So there'll be maybe some encoding options by then, because maybe OBS will support it and GPU screen recorder may support it. All these things will come together in the next couple of years. Now, one small fix when it comes to the Wine releases, not really small, but there was a couple of known bug fixes with Wine 10.19 that got released. There was 34 known that got fixed, and it helps games like Baldur's Gate 3, Horizon Zero Dawn, Airline Tycoon, plus fixes for .NET, managed COM components, Pegasus Mail, and other applications. So really good to see that Wine is improving. They did also do a 10.20 release, which was some other bug fixes, but nothing to do really with gaming, I don't think. And then there's also going to be the Wine 11.0 code freeze, which will be happening in early December. So really interesting, which should happen this month sometime. And then there's also going to be some other big things when it comes to these release plans, like some NT-Sync stuff, the new WoW 64 mode, some more like improvements with that. And then at some point, Proton is going to rebase to Wine 11, and hopefully by then, Wine Wayland will be ready by then, and hopefully it's enabled by default in Wine 11, hopefully. If there's anything left, then maybe it'll be delayed a bit longer, but it is really good to see that Wine 11 will release, I think if I remember correctly, Wine 10, I don't think it released so early last year, if I remember correctly. So it's good to see that Wine 11 is going to be released rather early, and hopefully Valve picks this up rather quickly, and things like NT-Sync may get enabled by default as well, which will make gaming just more better and more compatible with the Windows to Linux translation. Then there was the MangoHud 0.8.2 release. Now, what is important about this is it fixes Wayland keybinds under MangoHud. That was the biggest thing for me when I tried to use the Wayland driver and I wanted to have my FPS overlay. I couldn't enable it if it was hidden by default. When you launch a game, you can enable it to be hidden by default, or it just being enabled, you can't disable it. But now you can with MangoHud 0.8.2. And then some other things is if you enable MangoHud globally, usually MangoHud may get displayed on different types of Vulkan applications. And what needs to happen is that MangoHud needs to blacklist it, or you blacklist it yourself within something like Go Overlay. And we can see here in the changes, blacklisted all GTK4 applications, and then some other things, Panfrost GPU support, and many other things that have been added, like blacklisting the Marvel Rivals launcher. As I was saying, sometimes it appears in other types of things within Wine. So really good to see, because those things do get a little bit annoying when it appears in like a normal application. So just improving things. And of course, this release did take quite a long time when it comes to MangoHud releases. I would say the developer takes his time and he releases really good fixes and changes. Then one of the other really big things I would say is about the Valve-backed Color Pipeline API for Linux is finally ready for upstream. So if you don't know, the Color Pipeline API is a really important thing when it comes to color management, and it just improves the color management on the Linux desktop. When it comes to what exactly it improves, basically all of these things here are being added with the newest version. I'm pretty sure the final patch, which personally I don't really understand. There's some color profile things here like sRGB, some BT 2020 and BT 709 OETF and its inverse. So basically trying to just complete color management. And this will be available on AMD. When it comes to Nvidia, they will have to, I'm guessing they will have to implement this on their own in some way. So when it comes to the color management API and how is this like really important, I did find this blog post, which was from the 8th of 16th, but it still shows why this color management API is really important. It says, for years, color management on Linux has lagged behind other platforms, while basic color profiling has been available. Achieving truly accurate and consistent color across different displays and applications has often been a complex and frustrating experience. These discrepancies is particularly noticeable in professional workflows where color accuracy is paramount, such as photo editing, video production, and graphics design. Advanced color management addresses these limitations by providing a standardized and comprehensive framework for handling color transformation. This includes precise color calibration, ensuring that displays accurately reproduce colors as intended, gamut mapping, converting colors between different color spaces to minimize clipping and preserve visual fidelity, color rendering intent, specifying how colors should be handled when converting between color spaces, hardware acceleration, offloading color processing tasks to the GPU for improved performance. So the lack of robust color management has been a significant barrier for professionals and enthusiasts alike, hindering the adoption of Linux in color critical environments. AMD's Color Pipeline API aims to bridge this gap, offering a more streamlined and powerful solution for handling color on Linux. And I've also heard that this can be really good when it comes to app developers as well, because they can utilize this. I'm unsure about that necessarily, but when we scroll down further here, we have more of like key features and benefits. So support for multiple color spaces. The API supports a wide range of color spaces, including sRGB, Adobe RGB, Display P3, and Rec 2020, enabling accurate color reproduction on a variety of displays. This flexibility ensures compatibility with various professional and consumer grade monitors. And then dynamic color management. The API allows for dynamic adjustment of color transformations, enabling adaptive color management based on the content being displayed or the user's preferences. This capability opens up possibilities for features like automatic white balance adjustment and custom color profiles. Now, a lot of this stuff is actually already used in some of the Linux desktop like KDE Plasma, for example, but it's very early versions of this I've heard. So when this fully arrives, it should resolve the rest of the problems if someone is running an AMD GPU, they're running kernel, I think 7 is when this will arrive, because as we know, Linus Torvalds doesn't like to be higher in a kernel version than like .20 or like .19. So usually they will just skip to the next major version number. So it will just go 6.19 and then it should go kernel 7. Sometimes it will go 6.20 depending on, I don't know, Linus's thoughts or whatever, but it should be available in kernel 7. Color management will be extremely good on AMD cards at least. And by then, the Linux desktops like KDE Plasma and GNOME will have improved color management support as well even further. So when it comes to a professional artist, a freelancer who's working on different art or color grading and all that type of stuff, it should be consistent and it should be extremely like on par with other operating systems. Then we do have the usual, weekly Proton experimental releases, and so we've got things like Zalia, if that's how you say it, not interacting correctly with dialogues produced by Arc Raiders, fixed Proton experimental regression that caused games like Uno and Far Cry 4 to not start, fixed voice line playback in Rigid Force Alpha, if that's how you say it, and many other things. And when it comes to Proton 10, this finally got released as a stable release. It has been in RC and beta for so long, and as you can see here, a really big changelog of just improving Linux gaming when it comes to the stable Proton runner, so that everyone can just have a more better time when it comes to playing different games. But of course, as always, when it comes to Proton being enabled by default, it always chooses experimental. And in my opinion, you should always try to use Proton experimental, especially in types of games where they're constantly updating, like multiplayer games. But if it's single player games, Proton 10 usually is pretty good when it comes to just playing games on Linux. And then, of course, there is the usual GE Proton releases, which GE Proton like 10-25 and 24 and 23 and 22 and 21 have all been like released, and it's bringing more fixes when it comes to Wine Wayland patches, when it comes to updating DXVK and VKD3D Proton and Wine to the latest bleeding edge versions, just bringing all those fixes in, adding some Proton fixes for the FF14 launcher not working with Wine Wayland, so more Wine Wayland fixes, and then same goes with Karcher OS Proton. They've also probably brought in the same amount of fixes, just improving the gaming Linux space even more. Then one of the big YouTubers, I would say, when it comes to gaming hardware and doing gaming benchmarks with different hardware, and bringing also stories about how some corporate companies are a piece of crap, Gamers Nexus did post a video about Linux GPU gaming benchmarks on Bazzite. They decided to actually try out Linux because, as we all know, Windows 11 is becoming a pretty terrible operating system to use when it comes to playing games on it, when it comes to even using the desktop, when it comes to all different types of bugs appearing in the desktop as well. Every week there seems to be something new that breaks Windows, or they implement some AI features, or the CEO decides to make an opinion about how he wants Windows 11 to be an agentic AI operating system, and he wonders why people are absolutely disgusted by that, basically hating on the fact that no one wants Windows 11 to be an agentic AI. No one wants Windows to be that. And Gamers Nexus and many other people have been trying out Linux, I would say, and trying out the gaming side of things. And some people have been enjoying it, while others have been having some problems with newer hardware, like maybe the Ethernet drivers don't work properly, which is in part of one of my reaction videos, which I'll post probably soon-ish sometime. But Games Nexus did do a video about benchmarking Bazzite, and he didn't compare it against Windows because it wasn't a fair test, because necessarily they're not really ready when it comes to benchmarking Bazzite versus Windows, because they're kind of just trying to figure out how to do benchmarking on Linux with the tools that Linux has when it comes to things like MangoHud being able to track stats to bring up on a graph, to compare it against Windows and some other things. But the general consensus here was that Nvidia is sometimes good on Linux, but other times when it comes to DirectX 12 games, it starts to fall behind because of the problem with VKD3D not being really designed for Nvidia hardware with their drivers, and VKD3D requiring some Vulkan extensions, and Nvidia needing to do some driver work to make it use those Vulkan extensions so that VKD3D doesn't suck on Nvidia. And then when it comes to Intel hardware, it also having some problems in some games, having some graphical glitches and all that, which are resolved in newer versions at the time when they recorded the benchmarking on Bazzite. But overall, I think he was quite surprised of when it comes to just how Linux works when it comes to Linux gaming today. It's gotten pretty damn good at doing that on multiple different hardware. And of course, it just continues to improve. So I do hope in the future, Gamers Nexus does post more videos about Linux gaming and continuing to use Bazzite to figure out the things that they want for their benchmarking suite, so that they can compare it against Windows 11 or Windows 10 on all types of different hardware. So I would 100% go and watch this video if you want to see what they think about Linux gaming with Bazzite. And with Valve announcing the Steam Machine and the Steam Frame, one of the big things that a lot of people were thinking about is that, well, Valve really needs to improve their Steam VR experience on Linux when it comes to the experimental support that they have added for headsets like the Quest 3 that I have personally, and also Wayland support when it comes to Steam VR, because Steam VR doesn't run under Wayland natively yet. It still runs under X-Wayland, and that has some problems, like you're not able to view your desktop in the UI of Steam VR at all for some reason. Probably because Valve hasn't set up the desktop portal, or they haven't supported one of the other capturing methods on Wayland. It's a thing that Steam VR, Valve have been trying to improve, like adding experimental support for the Quest 3 recently and some of the other headsets like the Pico headsets, but they are slowly improving things. We can see that there is a fix here in the stable release 2.14, fixed a share memory leak that happened each time an app disconnected from Steam VR. That's cool, but right now, at least for me, I can't even use Steam VR because there is a problem with the encoding in Mesa that has been fixed, but I need Mesa 25.3 to be able to test out Steam VR again, which, if you're using an Arch-based distro right now, you can't get Mesa 25.3. Of course, when I upload this video, Mesa 25.3 probably will be out, but at the time of this recording, on the 2nd of the 12th of 2025, there is no Mesa 25.3, so I can't use Steam VR with my Quest 3. So the big question is, I really hope that Valve takes this seriously and they try their best to improve Steam VR on Linux, because it's highly important that they continue to improve it, because many people want to use Linux when it comes to VR, and Steam VR just isn't there yet. And then when it comes to Weaver N, there's some issues that I've had when it comes to like Dirt Rally 2, for example. I can't get my character to sit in the seat. He's too far low, so I literally can't see what I'm driving, where I'm driving. So there's bugs like that when it comes to the open source VR space. But Steam VR, I really do hope that they continue to improve it, and they actually bring it on par when it comes to the Windows VR experience. Then when it comes to Open Link Hub, if you don't know what this is for supporting all different types of Corsair devices within a web UI that you can access. 0.7.1 and I think maybe some other releases, 0.7.2 that added support for the HS80 wireless, the H100i RGB Pro XT, the GLAV, that's how you say it, RGB Pro, and then 0.7.1 added support for the HS80 Max wireless version, a new RGB editor, a gradient RGB mode, the K100 Air watercolor changes, the K100 Air gradient RGB mode, and some other fixes. So really good. And then some other releases they've done, like adding the Scuff Envision Pro V2, because that's part of the Corsair ecosystem or whatever. UI navigation changes, 0 RPM mode for IQ Link System Hub devices. And then we got some other devices that have been added, some IQ Link HX 1200i, 1000i, 1500i, Shift version, Nautilus, if that's how you say it, RSL LCD, and the K65 Mini have been added as well, and many others. So just more improvements when it comes to adding more Corsair devices. And if you guys do appreciate this project, I'd highly recommend that you donate to it, because this developer has been doing a lot of work when it comes to just bringing all of the Corsair support, because that was one thing that was kind of like kind of supported. Some devices were supported in other software, but it's really good to see that someone, you know, has gone out of their way to try and support all of the Corsair devices. Then when it comes to the handheld side of things, we have Linux 6.18, which will be releasing soon, to enable both touchscreens on the AYANEO Flip DS dual screen handheld. This is something that I've been seeing a lot lately, is dual screen handheld, and it is awesome, I would say. I highly want, what is it called? The Thor, I think it's called. It runs Android and has a dual screen. Highly reminds me of the like DSi XL or the 3DS basically. Just reminds me of when I used to use that, and I absolutely enjoyed my DSi XL. Sadly, it's actually bricked currently. When I was mucking around with it with homebrew and all that stuff, just rest in peace. But I did enjoy those devices, and as we see here, they're enabling the touchscreen support in kernel 6.18. Then when it comes to ASUS handheld support, they have done an ASUS Armory driver set to be introduced in Linux 6.19. Expected to be introduced in the upcoming 6.19 kernel cycle is the ASUS Armory driver for enhancing support for the ASUS ROG Ally gaming handhelds and other ASUS enthusiast / gaming devices under Linux. It was born out of the existing ASUS WMI driver, but overhauling it with a clean and more well-defined API. So basically, redoing their drivers, making the API just better with these devices that they are trying to support with Linux, which is really awesome to see. And when it comes to the Armory driver, some of the features it will have is like toggling the panel mode between FHD and UHD modes, adjusting the APU allocated memory depending upon user priority, and Intel core count control for P or E cores, reboot needed after making these adjustments, a screen auto brightness toggle, and other settings. So lots of important things that are going to be added to just improve this handheld support. And then when it comes to the Vulkan beta driver for Nvidia, the 580.94.11 did bring the HDR metadata support. So just adding a new Vulkan extension that is HDR metadata, that should just improve HDR experience, and the Nvidia 590 driver should be releasing soon, so that, well, those Vulkan extensions will probably be added. That will just improve HDR support on Linux side of things. Again, just improving the color side of things. And one of the projects that I have used many times for the past like 3.5 years of using Linux when it comes to gaming outside of Steam, Bottles, or Bottles is what I usually like to pronounce it as. they did a 60.0 release, or Mirko did. One of the main developers or the creator of Bottles did a huge release when it comes to adding some important things to Bottles like native Wayland option. So you're no longer going to have to do the environment variable, you can just enable it. Fixing things like Steam Deck controls don't work in gaming mode, so that's really good to see. And if we do look at Bottles today, it is a little bit different with some of its UI changes that they've done. So if we go into this test environment here, we can see some of the things have been moved around. So like my tutorials, for example, for how to set up Bottles will be a little bit different now. If someone watches that video and they're like,
oh, the UI looks different. How do I launch, run an executable?
They'd have to figure it out that it's different now. And then, yeah, well, if we go to settings here, we should find a Wayland experimental option that you can now enable, which is really nice to see. And of course, if you do appreciate what Bottles is doing, there is a love heart / donate button on the top right. Mirko does an insane job when it comes to just maintaining Bottles as best as he can while he works on other things like Bottles Next or some other projects that he may want to work on. Just trying to maintain it, as I've heard that Bottles Next has funding, but Bottles itself, this project here, doesn't actually have that funding that they got from that organization. So if you want Bottles to stay alive when it comes to the maintenance side of things, or improving, adding some little options that just improve it further, the server side of things as well, I'd highly recommend donating to them, because they do have options like LibrePay, PayPal, GitHub sponsors, Patreon, cryptocurrency, and Polar.sh as well. And then also there has been some more improvements for handhelds, like in kernel 6.18 sees late improvements for Xbox Ally, Lenovo Legion Go, and Alienware laptops. So we're closing in on the Linux 6.18 stable kernel release, likely in a little more than 1 week, 30th of November, bearing any delays. Well, it hasn't released yet, so, we'll see how that goes, see when it releases. Today's batch of x86 platform driver updates is bringing some new hardware support, as well as some notable consumer device fixes and improvements. So one is new hardware support in this pool includes adding support for the Asus ROG Xbox Ally gaming handheld to the AMD PMC driver for the platform management controller. This was motivated for adding the spurious 8042 quirk for dealing with spurious interrupts during resume on this Windows-focused gaming handheld. Also in the gaming handheld front, with the AMD PMC driver, is adding a quirk for the Lenovo Legion Go 2 to deal with the NVMe storage issue on resume. And then other new handheld support in this is x86 platform drivers pool is adding support to the Alienware WMI WMax driver for the Alienware 16 Aurora, Alienware M, Alienware X, and the Dell G series devices. And then the HP WMI driver, meanwhile, added support for fan controls to the Omen 16 WF1XXX, and the fan/thermal profile support for the Omen Max 16 AH0XX and Victus 16R0 and 16S0 laptops. Which is just insane. So many things that have been quickly moved in before the 6.18 release to improve many different devices. So if you do own any of these devices and you try Linux out with kernel 6.18, you should have a way better experience when it comes to using any of these devices. And another thing that happened that I would say is a pretty big deal is the Steam Linux Runtime 4 release, which updates the Steam runtime from, I think it was Debian 11 to Debian 13, because Valve skipped Debian 12. So we can see here that from the jump from 11 to 13, it updates so many different libraries. And if you don't know, the Steam Linux runtime is really important for, one, the Steam client, because the Steam client actually runs on the Steam client runtime version by default on most distros, including Arch now, because they used to have the native version on Arch, but no one was using it. So, well, they dropped it basically, and some other reasons as to why they dropped it. But now Steam runtime is the main version that is being used. And so this is needed for those libraries that make the Steam client, and when it comes to Linux gaming with Proton, or either it be a game using the Steam runtime as well, this will improve all of that because it's going to update all the libraries. It's going to update SDL to SDL 2, and then also SDL 3 will be used. And also, the release note also mentioned that most libraries previously available for i386 and x86_64 have gone x86-64 only. Only i386 libraries that are expected to be needed by Proton or other Steam tooling is kept. So, another thing that is happening is the 32-bit libraries are being dropped across the board on like everything basically with software. And so this might indicate also where Steam, the client, will move to a 64-bit version because right now Steam is running under 32-bit still. So with this being basically dropping 32-bit, other distros and libraries dropping 32-bit, Wine moving to WoW 64 to translate those libraries, and then hopefully Steam, which I've heard, Steam will update to 64-bit next year, January sometime, supposedly. So we'll see how that goes. But the Steam runtime switching, upgrading to version 4 is a big deal, just improving everything when it comes to Steam. And one of the another big releases that happened this month is VKT3D Proton got updated to version 3.0. And usually when VKT3D does a release, kind of like DXVK, they add a lot of things to it that just improve things so much. Things like the shader backend has been rewritten with the DXBC shader has been rewritten. And this solves some things like Red Dead Redemption 2, you were not able to play the game under the DirectX 12 version. It usually would be just a graphical mess when you tried to play it. I remember it was like transparent like everywhere when you tried to play it, or it would just crash, things like that. Now you can actually play the game under DirectX 12 if you want to. Of course, the Vulkan version is still really good as well as an option, but it gives the user multiple options. Then things like FSR 4 have been added. So we added for AGS WMMA through the Vulkan Cooperative Matrix and Vulkan Shader Float 8, which is enough to support FSR 4. Note that these shaders are tightly coded for AMD GPUs with some implementation-defined behavior, particularly around matrix layouts, and they will not necessarily work on other GPU vendors. So if you try to use FSR 4 in some way on other GPUs, you're probably going to have all types of different problems. And then they also do say that this is also quite a hacky emulation path of this, which relies on the INT8 and Float 16 cooperative matrix support, which can run on older GPUs at significant performance cost, in some cost of theoretical correctness, which is true. I've used FSR 4 through things like OptiScaler, for example, and actually setting it properly. And in my opinion, the performance, at least on RDNA 2, isn't actually that bad, and it looks really good. And then we can see here a bunch of new features, things like the add support for AMD anti-lag when exposed. The current implementation does not take FrameGen into account. So if you're looking for games like the Finals, for example, or Arc Raiders, I know of a user that wanted FrameGen in that, and it wasn't available. It is mostly because of this, basically saying that anti-lag is now like exposed and it's supported, but it doesn't support taking in the FrameGen into account. So if you are looking for that, you're probably going to have to wait a little bit longer for that to be supported in games like the Finals or Arc Raiders or some other games that do a similar thing. And then of course we have the usual really good performance improvements. Personally, a lot of this doesn't really make sense to me, but it seems like they are improving things like Last of Us Part 2, performance optimization, some Nvidia improvements, which should avoid some massive performance drops in Halo Infinite on Nvidia GPUs. So really awesome. And then use push descriptor path on Qualcomm GPUs over BDA for speed. Don't really know what they're talking about there, but more improvements. Some fallback shader improvements. things, removed manual clear workaround on newer 6.15.9 plus kernels on AMD, where an old kernel regression was finally fixed. So that's really good to see as well. Just improving things further with VK83D, and of course a bunch of different fixes for all types of different games, like fixed rare deadlock scenario in Ninja Guardian 4, fixed some texture bugs in Helldivers 2 on Nvidia, fixed some bugs with memory type handling on very old Nvidia GPUs, fixed shared fences when initial value is not 0, fixes some Star Citizen issues. That's really good to see. So I know some people do like playing that game on Linux, so really good to see. And then a bunch of workarounds that have been added as well to just basically work around problems that can't be really fixed. So they just add, workarounds. Things like workaround Mafia Definitive Edition, hanging GPU when using FSR on startup due to use after free. And missing barrier in Death Stranding, the older build, not director's cut, and missing barrier in Withering Waves. That's really good to see. And MISC AMD workarounds for Monster Hunter Wilds caused by bugged hardware around sparse SMEM. A proper hardware workaround and RADV is still pending. So once this has been fixed actually in Mesa, then this shouldn't be needed. Then added FF7 Rebirth sync bugs workarounds, fixed some rare GPU hangs, so just improving things further with some workarounds. Then we also do have Nexusmods doing another release, just improving their new mod manager that will replace Vortex at some point. This is really important because they're trying to introduce Skyrim or just Bethesda modding support into Nexusmods, and it's like almost there basically. They're just adding the last pieces that I think maybe before Christmas we might see a new release that might add it as maybe a Christmas present. That's just hopium, but to be realistic, they're probably going to add it maybe the start of next year maybe. I think they're getting to that point where they've added most things when it comes to like the load order stuff to get, Bethesda support added, and hopefully more games into the future. Then, of course, we do have Go Overlay, which I did make a video about this particular release, which added OptiScaler to Go Overlay, which is a thing that allows to basically do translation, I'm pretty sure, to either upgrade certain FSR or DLSS. So if you wanted to use FSR 4 on a certain game, you are able to do that even if you have like an RDNA 2 GPU. And it also does add things like frame generation support with like the Decky frame gen plugin. It adds the fake Navi Envy API, so that if you launch a game, it's going to show DLSS and an Nvidia reflex as well. If you're on AMD, if you're trying to do that, it just uses AMD anti-lag anyways, but it's basically trying to like just fake it. So if you guys do want to check out OptiScaler, you can check out my video that I did about this, showing just like how it works. I did forget to show one thing which was really important, and that was the overlay that it has, where you're actually able to configure the DLSS or FSR or XeSS to what version you actually want to use. So if you want to use FSR 4, you can actually do that, but you have to open up the overlay, which I don't show in the video, things like that. But I would definitely go watch it because it's really awesome. Then we also do have Nvidia sending out the initial Turing GPU support for the open source Nova driver, which is their new open source kernel driver that is being worked on by Nvidia and Red Hat developers. So they've been adding the Turing support, the initial Turing support. So for me, if I want to use the Nova driver, or anyone else has a Turing GPU, like I have an RTX 2060, I could probably use the Nova driver now. Not now, probably later on when it's actually usable. I could use it and it would work properly. And then this one is preparing for Hopper and Blackwell GPU support with the Nova driver. So it seems like Nvidia is trying to basically start actually introducing GPU support for the Nova driver, which is really awesome. Then we also do have some new ray tracing extensions in Vulkan 1.4.33. So this will improve lots of things, like when it comes to AMD ray tracing or Intel ray tracing or Nvidia ray tracing on Linux when it comes to, you know, because usually ray tracing isn't really that great compared to Windows. It's okay, but especially on like AMD hardware, these new ray tracing extensions will just improve it that little bit more if they get implemented into the drivers. And then we do have Mesa 25.3, which is a really big release when it comes to all types of different hardware, either be Intel, AMD, when it comes to Nvidia, the NVK drivers as well, improving things further. There is many different fixes, either it be graphics, either it be Vulkan video, either it be just so many different things. Like, as we can see here, we can just scroll and we can look at the right side and just how many things have been added across all of the developers on, you know, because Mesa is, you know, a user space driver that includes multiple different drivers for multiple different things when it comes to graphics APIs, things like RADV for AMD on Vulkan, ANV for Vulkan on Intel, or it'd be, you know, NVK for Vulkan on Nvidia. Just so many things, and there's so many game fixes I know that are in here. You can just go on for ages, and it's just, there is so many things. And of course, there's going to be regressions, which there was some regressions that were spotted when it came to when Fedora brought it in, I'm pretty sure. And so they had to fix that up. So again, huge release, lots of fixes. I'm probably not going to read through it, but as you can see, just the amount of things that are in this release is just truly insane. The amount of work that goes in to all of this. So when you get Mesa 25.3, test it out, see if anything has improved for you, which for me, currently, I do not have it because Arch is taking their time when it comes to Mesa 25.3. Then when it does come to the new Steam controller, this has already been upstreamed into SDL3, even though the controller is not released yet. They have brought it into SDL, so if you run a game that uses SDL, like if you use like the Steam input, I'm pretty sure that will use SDL. I think just the support for the Steam controller should be really good. Then with the Steam VR stuff that I was talking about, the RADV driver did add the Valve video extension. So the Valve video encode RGB conversion has been added to RADV, so that Steam VR can just be better when it comes to the video encode type of stuff when it comes to Steam VR. And then another thing that has happened is Linux proposal aims to overcome kernel limitation affecting various gaming peripherals. So one of the things that I personally didn't know about is that Linux, when it comes to wireless earbuds or headphones, it only likes to count one battery. And lots of headphones today have more than one battery. So this is going to be resolved, which is really awesome to see. So if you have multiple different batteries when it comes to wireless stuff, this should fix a lot of different things: gaming headsets, graphics tablets, wireless earbuds, multi-device receivers. Really awesome. And then another big thing that happened, I would say, at XDC 2025 was about finally improving and fixing the multi-GPU experience on Linux. Because if you don't know, when it comes to multi-GPUs on Linux, it seems to be where basically the applications don't know what the user wants when it comes to what GPU that the app should use or the game should use. If you ever had a laptop that had multiple GPUs, or even if you have a desktop PC that has an iGPU and a desktop GPU with like AMD CPUs have their own iGPU or Intel, etc., lots of different games or apps might behave differently with what they see and what they choose. And they don't know what the user really wants when it comes to what GPU it wants the app or game to use. So this is going to be resolved. It says the issue: multi-GPU has bad reputation on Linux of being slow and being unnecessary power draw, known as being difficult to get working. People expect to have to manually select the GPU to possibly log out, in, or even reboot. Forums are full of random environment variables without a lot of explanation. Various prime utilities and magic solutions exist. Few work consistently or provide any actual benefit. So what they're going to do is, of course, add a GPU daemon And so basically this will work as like a middleman as to what GPU should be used. And I did see where the user was able to see what was being used on the particular application as well, where it was like Firefox was using the desktop GPU and you could change it in a GUI on the desktop and switch it to like an iGPU, for example, if you want to be on battery mode. Stuff like that is really important, and it's really good to see that two developers from Red Hat and System 76 are working towards this so that multi-GPUs can just be resolved and we can move on to other important things to improve Linux desktop further. And another thing is D7VK aims to deliver Direct 3D 7 atop Vulkan. So if you're someone that wants to play DirectX 7 games on Linux and you've been waiting for this, like you got some really old games, you might be able to do this in the future, as a developer is working on it and is trying to improve it. And like as it says here, it's in early stages of development, so don't expect like any games to actually like work properly. And as I've heard in the comment section on my channel as well, DirectX 7 is not really that great in itself, so I wonder how well this is going to perform in the future on top of Vulkan when it's being translated. And then another thing is Mesa lands fixes for HDR with Vulkan drivers, merged overnight to Mesa 26.0, which is the next version that will be releasing, and likely to be backported for upcoming Mesa 25.3 release are a few fixes around high dynamic range support within the common Vulkan windowing system integration WSI/display code. So Mario sent out, interesting, sent out what he says are 3 important bug fixes to the HDR support for Mesa's Vulkan drivers with the WSI display backend. These fixes, which were tested with the AMD RADV driver, include HDR, enable HDR even if the Vulkan client app doesn't call set HDR metadata, but just selects a HDR color space for the swap chain, accept HDR metadata with luminance levels of 0 nits. Standard says these are valid and mean undefined/unknown for the video sync, and restore SDR mode again when the swap chain gets destroyed. At least some drivers, e.g. AMD GPU, need a full atomic mode set for switching between SDR and HDR modes. So these Mesa Vulkan HDR fixes are now merged for Mesa 26, get users in time to the Mesa 25.3 series. And that is basically it for this month in Linux gaming. There has been so many things that have happened this month. Just truly insane what I'm reading here and what I've just all read out. It has just been an insane month. So many improvements. The Steam Machine and the Steam Frame. It's truly awesome to see where Linux desktop and Linux gaming is currently, and I can't wait to see the bigger improvements leading into the Steam Machine and Steam Frame release, because I think there's going to be a lot of big improvements before those devices release, which will bring Linux desktop, make it ready when it comes to the desktop experience, when it comes to maybe some extra Wayland things, some extra HDR things, as I've seen some color management things, driver things, just user GUI software as well. So many different things. So if you guys did enjoy this video, definitely give it a like, definitely subscribe to the channel, and thank you to my supporters. I'll show a text across the screen. Thank you for giving me money every single damn month. This video has been recording for 1 hour and 19 minutes now, and I am losing my voice once again, but oh well. Next month I'm going to have to do this again anyways, so hopefully there is even more things that happened with next month in Linux gaming. Anyways, peace.